Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for the third webinar of IT Career Fundamentals, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward, short course coordinator and MC for this group of webinars. Your expert on cybersecurity is Jeremy Costa, who you can see in the videos, who has taught and developed many of the subjects in the Charles Sturt security degrees. We'll hear from him shortly. Before then, though, just the usual housekeeping. Given we use Zoom for our webinars, we encourage questions and the use of chat throughout the webinar. We ask that you direct all questions relevant to course content to the Q&A section, and that you send all administration type questions and other stuff to the support team in chat. You can chat with panelists only, as I always say, or to your fellow students as well, and you can make that choice in the drop-down box once you open the chat log. Do please try to keep it tangentially at least related to what's going on, as it can be a bit distracting for some. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, or if anything is particularly relevant, I'll interrupt Jeremy. As usual, Hannah is here as the admin technical support person. She's looking after you lot in the chat forum and is also responsible for the course website, the Moodle, learn.itmasters.edu.au, which is where all of the other materials needed for this course are, and there's heaps on there now. Jenny from IT Masters is also here listening in. She assesses students' eligibility for credit towards their post-grad degrees, and perhaps more relevantly for those attending this short course, assesses potential students' eligibility to enter their desired courses. I'll give you a hint, there's usually a way in if you want it. These short courses can really help with pathways for inexperienced people. So here's Jeremy. Please make him welcome in the chat, folks. He's another industry-embedded security superstar, Charles Sturt Uni Security Masters graduate, long-term short course and postgraduate mentor. I'm quite looking forward to this one, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us as ever. What tales of swashbuckling heroics from a darkened room will you excite us with?
Try to get out every now and then. Thanks, Guy. Welcome, everyone. This week, obviously, on cybersecurity. I look forward to giving you an introduction to cybersecurity industry and basically the, try and coerce you into considering cybersecurity as a career path. It's a good industry to be a part of. You can contribute to society. You can, be on the right side of the fence and help organizations be successful. So yeah, I encourage you to have a think about it and ask questions around that at the end if you've got some queries. All right, so a bit about me. Jeremy Costa. I'm no longer the Information Security Manager for MQIT. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at that university. I have and I also do this lecturing with CSU, but believe it or not, I've been doing lecturing for IT Masters for 9 years, longer than I've been at the other university. But before that, I was in telecommunications. I did about 10 years, maybe 12 years in telco, around some of the big names that are household names for providing services to everyone's mobile and broadband, that sort of thing, which is a very different security paradigm than in the education sector. I probably had about 20 years in cybersecurity all up, a bit more in IT in general as I worked my way through desktop support and server support and network support. I kind of wanted to give myself broad understanding of technology and how that all works before diving into cybersecurity. And that's really has been a good strategy. It's held me in good stead. It's allowed me to understand technical risk and be able to translate it to a business impact. I've been responsible in various capacities for pen testing, incident response, consulting to projects and to corporates, enterprise security architecture for a number of years, always risk management, as I'll talk about, team management and team building as well, and then governance at the executive level, and obviously compliance. There's a lot of compliance activities within the cybersecurity industry. I've got a number of certifications. You look at them there, and I've got a couple of degrees, and I finished one this year, which was a lot of hard work, but fun. Okay, so cybersecurity is an interesting beast. The digital world is not so new to us, and we use it for everything, right? But it is evolving all the time. We are doing more on our smartphones, doing more through the computer, and the fundamental fact is that if we are putting more assets into the digital environment, there is more chance that that asset might be accidentally exposed or maliciously attacked and utilized. And there's no going back. We are going this way. We're heading into putting all of our assets into a digital format. Gone are various paper forms. You see it through government. You see it in corporate. And I'm not talking about the old term paperless society. I'm just talking about the assets in the digital sphere are just increasing. And with the assets, so do the risks. So going forward, we need to be able to supply and be able to operate digital systems that are safe from cyber attack and allow us to operate in that digital realm and safely as well. But what's different about that digital realm is that it has different qualities to the physical world. Now, if you walk up to someone in the street that you don't know, there's probably about 10 or 12 indicators if you should trust them or not straight away. If they're, looking a bit dodgy, they're looking around, they're wearing a hoodie and a backpack, and they're vaping, and they come up to you and say, "Hey, give me $5." They're not someone who you're going to trust immediately. You do all of these trust decisions subconsciously. Similarly, when you walk up to a McDonald's, you're looking at the storefront and you see the normal logo, you see people in uniforms, there is effort and polish to what you're walking up to, and you trust that place. Even if you've never been to that McDonald's before, you trust that place that they're going to give you a Big Mac, and probably a fairly decent one because it's all standards driven. If you have a fake McDonald's out there that looks like this picture here, you'll walk up to it and immediately know that it's not right. That's because in the physical world, there is a lot of effort that goes into making people trust. And there's a lot of indicators of something you don't trust. It is not so in the digital world. If you understand the full technical background in, the SMTP protocol, and you understand headers, header froms, envelope froms, and you get right into technical detail and look at the email trail or the MTA trail and transport list and get into it, then maybe you can figure out if it's come from the right person. But for the general user, there's a lot of ways to impersonate, particularly in email. So impersonation in the digital world is effective and it's not so difficult. You can sometimes completely replicate a website. And I've seen that with phishing crews actually putting together websites and just a little bit of a change in the domain name, but everything else is identical. That's because digital can be replicated. You remember those when CDs came out, you could actually replicate the CD from one CD to the other. You couldn't do that with tape. It was all analog and you would lose quality along the way. But with digital, we can impersonate perfectly most of the time. Also, automation of attacks allow for scale. So we have scripts that are written by experts. And if you run that script and you've never written anything to do with reverse shells or with smashing the stack or anything like that, any techniques, you can still run this script. So this automation and being able to stand on the shoulders of giants allows people who aren't technical competent to be able to perpetrate cyber attacks as well. So that means there is a low skill and knowledge a lot of the time to defraud individuals. And you'll see that with some of the crazy phishing that comes out and the people that fall for it. We also have, all of our digital identities are mostly reachable across the globe. If you think about it, you've never really been able to be sent a letter from Russia, because it would have cost a bit of money, but in milliseconds, you can receive an email from anywhere on the planet with zero cost. So we are globally reachable. All the internet sites, all the internet facing things that we have, are accessible from all over the world, and cyber criminals know this and they're utilizing it heavily. And the final reason the digital world is different is the risk to the attacker is low. If you're sitting there in Russia, keep on I keep on beating up on Russia, but let's try Iran. If you're sitting there in Iran and you are wanting to attack someone in Australia, you can do it from your basement without real fear of someone coming and knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" You are able to attack at a distance. There is no physical risk. However, if you want to go and rob your next door neighbor and you don't know whether they're there, you don't know if there's cameras, you don't know if they've got a guard dog, you're actually putting your physical body into someone else's property to relieve them of their assets. And that places the attacker at risk. So in the digital world, the risk of attack is low. And we see this here, deal with some law enforcement. They're talking about physical robberies going kind of the way of the dodo. They're just really decreasing, and digital crimes just on the absolute rise. And that's what we'll see in the future. It just makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm seeing the chats go past. We might save some of these questions, particularly like the one about tracking someone in Australia, but we can talk about that. The tale of two perimeters. So when we're thinking about an organization, the organization really has two ways that someone from around the globe, so some international cyber criminal or even a local cyber criminal, would be able to approach you or the systems, the organization. There's two perimeters. They are the people and the systems. The people at the end of mailboxes and the systems that are internet facing. Mailboxes allow for malicious emails to come through and perform a number of attacks. And obviously this guy's phishing here on the right, but basically phishing is obtaining that personal information through a sense of urgency and imitating maybe a sysadmin or some friend who's sharing a file. And this leads to often business email compromise, which then leads to on spam, using your mailbox for on spamming your organization, or scamming, or getting in between invoices and things like that. We also have malware here, where we actually have documents coming through, landing on a desktop, someone executing that document or opening it up and executing code inside it, and then all of a sudden they have a footprint in your environment. Spam is just annoying, but you know, it's still pervasive. And then this scam, payment through imitation blackmail, similar to the invoice scam. But there's also blackmail scams that come around. I saw one recently that said, I'm part of a demolition organization. If you don't pay me 2 Bitcoin, I'm going to blow up your building. And then underneath it said something like, if you're the FBI looking at this, we're not terrorists, we just want to make money. So there's all sorts of ridiculous malicious emails out there that are able to come to the first perimeter, and that is your people. Your people are reachable via this method. Now, we all have anti-spam and we have antivirus on our mail platforms, but it's not perfect, because the bad guys are now compromising accounts, and from that account looking through who that person is sent to and resending email, but with malicious content. So they are basically sending to trusted individuals who are receiving an email about a subject they're expecting with the document that they will happily open. So it is getting really, really not so much sophisticated, but phishing emails from within the trusted ecosystem. The second perimeter is the systems that are internet facing. And obviously we have website defacement, placing unwanted content on your website or changing it for embarrassment. We have denial of service, where you flood the network, either volumetric or actually exhausting the resources that are on the website so it can't facilitate legitimate requests. Also, crypto mining became popular for a while. It's died back a bit now. And now it's more about getting access to data, breaching it, locking it up, and threatening to expose it in a ransomware attack. We see this everywhere. It's going to cause major issues for cyber insurance. Has already started to raise premiums around the place. But basically, these are the two perimeters we have, the people and the systems. And if we look at our organizations that way, we're trying to protect them from that onslaught of attacks from outside. I like Kathy's comment there. Is Mac relatively need relatively low or no security? All computers need good security, and there are ways to use every computer in an insecure way, like with weak passwords and not patching it and not having antivirus. Even for a Mac, I'd recommend having antivirus. Cool. Okay, so in cybersecurity, we have some key recommendations. It would be remiss of me if I didn't talk about these, so you can protect yourselves, but also get an understanding of the basic sort of recommendations that you provide. We have, regularly update your laptop, server, and software, use antivirus, run periodic scans, employ a quality anti-spam service at your organization. Only provide access to information that is required for business purposes. And this is starting to get really important because we're reaching the age of being able to have unlimited storage, and particularly for emails. We think about that our organizations are accumulating data at a rapid rate and are not really understanding the structure or content of that data from a sensitivity perspective. We want to educate staff to identify scam and phishing emails. Very important, but like a leaky bucket, it just has to be done all the time. And then choose long and strong passwords. Very important, especially if your passwords have been exposed. Going onto sites like Have I Been Pwned would tell you if your password at a particular service has been exposed. So it's important to be notified of such things and then change your password. I don't necessarily think changing your password every month or every 3 months is actually beneficial, controversially. I actually think you're better off going for multi-factor authentication and possibly just keeping a strong password as well. And then finally, last two is only keep the data necessary for business purpose. So you don't want to collect data that is going to bring undue risk to your organization if it is exposed. And then regularly perform tests and backups. And then the one in bold down here is manage cybersecurity risk, which is what being in cybersecurity industry is all about. It's a catch-all. Okay, so we might do poll 1. If we can, Guy.
Very good. While I'm getting that up and launching that off, which threat do you believe presents the biggest risk to an organization? Internal, which is staff and third parties, or external, hackers and criminals? We'll let that bubble away and people can enter their votes. We've got a couple of interesting questions on passwords. I use Chrome Password Saver and recommendation. Am I safe to assume that Google will simply never get hacked?
If you're using Chrome Password Saver in your Google account, then I'd recommend putting multi-factor authentication on that account. It kind of becomes the keys to your kingdom, and it will accumulate all the access into all your various services. So use Google Authenticator for your account, and then it's relatively safe. So yeah, that's okay. Other alternatives are LastPass or 1Password, I think.
Cool, thank you. Alrighty, we'll look at the poll. I've got 2/3 voted, and a fairly clear majority believe that internal threats present the biggest risk to organizations. Yeah. 70-30 split. So I'll share those results so you can see them on the screen.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I ask the same question in all of my subjects, and the results are very biased in this direction. And I'm not sure why that is. I think there was some very clear news articles in the past about, the rogue admin, doing fraud or causing major issues. And the idea that if you're an insider, then you're quite likely to have access to huge amounts of data and quite likely to expose that. Now, I don't want to diminish the risk of internal people, but generally the risk to internal people of being caught is much higher than the risk to external people. And if I'm honest about where I spend cybersecurity money in my roles that I've had, it's been to protect organizations from external attackers. They are the most active. They are probably more devastating now than they ever have been with the advent of ransomware. So I vote for the external hackers. Yeah, and I think
what
there
about
was
the
a few.
extent of damage? Like, can internal people sort of clean out more effectively, or are external actors getting better at that now too?
A bit of both. So internal people do have access to more than external people just by the nature of it, but you trust your internal people. They have skin in the game. They don't want to end up in jail, and they want to keep receiving a wage. Really, you need someone who's gone a bit off the wall to really take an organization through the ringer, and it doesn't happen that often. In my time as cybersecurity professional, I've not seen anything like the damage from internal people that I have from external cyber criminals.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. All right, we'll jump back into this one. Okay, so whoops. So my suggestion is to join the fight. Cybersecurity skills are in demand, and it's typically expensive for organizations to get third parties to do cybersecurity. So it is good to have your own internal cybersecurity people. And also cybersecurity firms are growing. And all organizations are an eventual target, whether you're not a target because of what you do or who you are as an organization, you're definitely a target because you have digital assets that can be used to attack other people as well. So you are eventually going to get targeted. And I'm not trying to be scary about that. It's just the truth of the matter. You get the opportunity to protect the community that you're a part of, the country that you live in, and also improve the cybersecurity of organizations globally. And that's really a noble profession, I think, to actually work hard at doing that, making sure people succeed and making sure crime doesn't succeed is really, yeah, it's quite satisfying. It is demanding. It moves very quickly. If you think about all the different disciplines, all the technology disciplines in IT, for cybersecurity, you need to know how those work and how they might be attacked as they progress. We're dealing with differences in cloud technology, in network technology, in virtualization. Over the last 20 years, things have changed rapidly. So it's not a discipline that you can just learn and stop learning. And once you've learned everything, you can do cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a constant learning endeavor, and there's no way really past that. The idea is we just need to make it harder for the bad guys. It's a great mantra. We make it very easy sometimes for the bad guys, and some of the courses that are taught at IT Masters teach you how to understand the hacker and understand what they're going to try and target. And understanding that adversary is really important, and making it hard for them is one of the main objectives. And it's satisfying to outwit the criminals and attackers, and you won't always do it. So it can be stressful. It can, you know, I say to my family sometimes, I've really got to deal with this. I'm going to be late. I've had times where I've had, you know, a couple of all-nighters dealing with issues. It can be stressful, and that can't be sugarcoated. If you're the last person, the security lead in an organization, the buck stops with you to make sure that an incident is addressed and a risk is addressed so that the organization is not exposed. And that's not always your own fault either. I know organizations that are very good at security, but they just got unlucky. They were just targeted, something was left open. And I know other organizations that have not done nearly as much work in cybersecurity controls, and yet they have been not targeted, they've been left alone. So there's a bit of randomness in it as well. I do think one day I'll lose a week of my life to a massive incident. I'm hoping that won't happen anytime soon. All right, so cybersecurity workplace, what does it look like? You've got penetration testers, you've got incident response people, you've got people who are providing consultative advice to parts of the organization that are trying to get things done. We have audit and compliance. We have cybersecurity management. How do you manage all of that and make sure it goes in the right place? You might have an internal cyber practice, or you might have an external practice that comes in and does cyber work for you and gets an understanding. I'm always of the opinion that some internal cybersecurity capability is important, because you need someone embedded in the organization who understands the assets and how the organization operates, to really get a good understanding of how it might be attacked and what's important to the organization. And then obviously risk management is a massive part of it. That kind of is like the mesh that sits over all these different capabilities and ties them all together. And that's how you guide the cybersecurity activities in a direction that addresses the highest risk. Now, I'll say it's all about trust, because if you're in an organization and everyone is avoiding you because dealing with the security guy is a little bit uncomfortable and awkward and not a good experience, then you're not achieving your goals. If you have a reputation in the organization to be approachable, you have a reputation of being helpful, of trying to help the organization to achieve its goals, then people will come to you and ask you, how am I going to do what I want to do as an organization securely? And that is winning as a cybersecurity professional. When people are approaching you straight out of the gate, and you don't need to always rely on that framework and the checkpoints to make sure people come to you, then that is winning. So the important thing is to be empathetic to the business. We want to know we want to know what the business wants to achieve. And this is all about aligning the cybersecurity activities with the business goals. If we are going against the business goals, then the business is going to find its way around us. So it's as simple as that. Now, one of the things that I think is key for communicating cybersecurity in an effective manner in an organization is being able to describe risk in the form of threat scenarios. Okay, so, and I'll talk about these a bit more, but basically it's an agent, so a person, someone who's operating, an asset, so something the organization holds as something valuable, like maybe their customer database, and a negative impact, like exposure to the public, or you know, being deleted, or being scrambled, or loss of some sort. So this is a threat scenario, and I'll talk about them in a bit. We might go for poll 2, Guy, just to
quicker
just in
on the
case
mute
you're falling
button.
asleep.
Oh no, I always enjoy listening to these. As a non-technical person, it's all bloody useful when I talk to people who want to come in. What type of attack keeps Jeremy awake at night, might you think? iTunes gift voucher scams, phishing that leads to invoice scams, ransomware, or rogue system administrator? I was wondering whether it was the shack attack earlier today, but you know, it's not an option.
Not this one. Actually, what keeps me up at night is my 9-year-old son.
No one has gone for iTunes gift voucher scams. I don't know.
No, that's incredible.
Hannah has stories about iTunes gift voucher scams.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They keep on happening.
Yeah. Used to get people coming to her workplace that would just, you know, come in and buy them every week. It's pretty amazing. It's really sad, actually. But only
it's very sad. It's like bottom feeding. It's terrible. Oh, someone said iTunes gift vouchers.
Oh, well done. We've got a few winners. Ransomware is a true winner tonight, though. 55% in this poll. Then we've got rogue system administrator and phishing that leads to invoice scams, about 20% each, and just those that know Hannah, perhaps the iTunes gift voucher scams. So I'll end that.
Yeah. Yeah, great. You're right. Ransomware is what keeps me up at night. If there is an attack that is going to happen, the iTunes gift voucher scam, obviously some people are losing some money. It's very sad. Not very many people fall for it. It's constant. Surprisingly, some do still fall for it, but I really don't like it because it's like bottom feeding really badly. So it's, yeah, not nice. Phishing that leads to invoice scam is bad. That's probably the number two. Sorry, that's, yeah, probably the second thing. So it just nudges ahead. So you've got the order right here as well, nudges ahead of rogue system administrator. The rogue system administrator, I'm not that concerned about, because in most of the organizations I worked in, the security guy works very closely with the system administrators, and often, because often that's where the attacks are occurring. So you know them pretty well, and you can get a good sense if things are okay or not. If you didn't have a good relationship with the system administrator as a cybersecurity professional, then there might be some work that needs to happen there, so that you can get close. So that doesn't keep you up at night, but the ransomware does. And the reason why the ransomware does is not just because of the damage that it can cause, it's because of the amount of money involved in ransomware at the moment. We've seen the massive Garmin incident, there was a few other, Travelex, I think it was. There's the Toll Group. There are organizations paying multi-millions of dollars to these money for jam for them. They are going to persist. So I make a prediction here that in the next 10 or 15 years is going to be the cybersecurity community is going to be fighting ransomware as public enemy number one. Oh yeah, Coles gift card scams. Good on you, Coles.
Thanks.
All right. No problems. All right. So threat scenarios. Let's talk about these. So the actor, we have bad guy, the malicious guy. He's outside. He wants to break into your organization. He wants to do nasty things. The good guy, there is accidental threats that occur. So that person who accidentally emails the patient list out of the hospital organization, or that you know, or the person who emails all the source code out to a third party who may be a competitor. So there's accidental as well that we need to think about as well, but mostly we spend our time on the malicious, surprisingly. Or not surprisingly, actually. Then there's also the negative impact, right? So might be exposure of data, might be unauthorized access from a particular individual, might be loss of service, might be loss of data, and it might be scrambling or loss of integrity of the data as well. And asset is either two things, either the confidential information, so you know, you think about bulk information where your databases are, the private information that relates to people that they don't want exposed, and maybe the commercial information that lose commercial edge or lose some sort of business benefit in the future. And then there's also the privileged function or business functionality. Okay, and this is more about denial of service. So if you've got a website that's making lots of money all the time, the asset is actually the functioning of that website and being able to service payment. So it's important that privileged functions are protected as well. Another privileged function might be your console login to AWS. That's a privileged function because you can actually turn off all the servers. While you may not be in there to access all the information, you actually need to protect that asset as well, because it is powerful to be able to have access in that manner. So a threat scenario might be a malicious attacker gained access to the customer database, unauthorized access to the customer database, right? Now, the malicious attacker, the external attacker, is the actor. The unauthorized access is the negative impact, and the asset is the customer database, all right? And that's how it kind of works. And if you can talk in those simple terms and strip away all the ifs, buts, and try and get it to that simple, you're actually allowing the business to understand the impact to their business asset. And if they actually care about the customer database, and they think, oh no, if that customer database is exposed or accessed in an unauthorized way, then there is a huge amount of cleanup that we have to do, and it may actually damage the organization's reputation. So that is the key to explaining risk in an organization. Now, it's worthwhile talking about ethics because when you're in a position of a security professional in an organization, there's a couple of things that you have access to. Most likely you have access to some administrative functions. So, the domain admin or access to cutting off accounts or doing investigations, lots of sensitive information in the SIEM, the security logging platform. And you may even have, as a pen tester, some skills to be able to break into systems. And it's always important that you have permission to do what you're planning on doing. Otherwise, you can end up in hot water. Make sure you have an understanding of what the scope of your task is, and generally don't go out of it, because unauthorized access is considered illegal. And if you find yourself in a place where you shouldn't be, then it's important to notify someone or make sure you remove yourself as quickly as possible. It's also important to respect your peers. I see a lot of bad culture in cybersecurity where one organization will have a breach and others will snigger and laugh and poke fun at. And it's just, we have to get past that. It's not helpful or conducive to information sharing. When someone has a breach, and I'll take Australian National University as the example of this, when someone has a breach and they publish an extensive incident report, it helps the whole industry in preparing for a similar attack. When we don't respect each other and we poke fun at each other and say, that'll never happen to me, then people clam up, and it's not helpful, and we need to move past it as an industry. So I appeal to all of you heading into the industry that support those around you and have sympathy for those around you who might end up in a data breach. So be nice, make friends, consider that someone always knows more. So before you start criticizing someone for that strange question that you knew the answer to 2 years ago, there's someone else who knows stuff that you're going to learn in 2 years. So it's important to not undercut people or try and make them feel silly about what their question is or what they know. Someone always knows more. Yeah, just be aware of that. And everyone has their specialty as well. When you're working for educational institutions or in a corporate, you'll see people who have risen the ranks and are doing a fantastic job of what they do. That means they're good at what they do, either a researcher or a marketing person or a financial person. It doesn't mean they're an expert in cybersecurity. They don't expect you to understand their discipline. We shouldn't naturally expect them to understand our discipline. So we need to be able to help each other and educate each other. And this speaks a little bit to cybersecurity people feeling like they're the smartest guys in the room and saying so. And it's important that we don't approach the discipline like that or the understanding of cybersecurity like that. It's just because we spend more time in it and other people have their speciality, and we need to be able to respect that. So be approachable, inclusive, and play the long game. You want to win people's trust. You want to win the organization's culture and head it in the right direction. And use your skills and access for ethical purposes. When you have those skills to break in, or you have that access to someone's details, their location, or something they've accessed, use it in an ethical way only for the purposes that you're required for your job. And I like this over here: think before you speak, read before you think. It's a lot of things to learn in cybersecurity. It's never stopping. So it's important to have a good think about it before we speak up. All right, so in the business, we need to have a good approach to cybersecurity. We have to help the business and get a positive cybersecurity culture. The idea is we only spend what we need to protect the business and to achieve its risk appetite. Often we approach it like we're getting rid of all risk. There's no such thing as getting rid of all risk. The way it works is you get a list of priorities, a list of risks, and you rate them and you attack the top ones first that are going to cause you a bit of a problem, and you just work through it. And there's no getting to the bottom of that list, I'm afraid to say. It's a sad state, but there's no getting to the bottom of that list. There is always things to do with cybersecurity. You could put a team of 100 people on cybersecurity and continue to refine and implement new controls and assess risk, but it's about that balance. How do you get the right amount of security in the organization? And that's what the business is looking at its cybersecurity capability, its cybersecurity leadership to work out. So everything is a risk assessment. We need to understand the asset that the business holds as valuable, the impact and the likelihood of that risk occurring. This lady here on the tightrope is thinking, what is the risk of me falling? If she's any good, probably pretty low. What is the impact? Well, I can see she's got a tether there. She's got to fall upside down and get quite scared. That's the impact. It would be a completely different risk if she didn't have that tether. Okay, she would be taking this in a very different way. She'd probably be on all fours with and not moving at all, right? So we have to think about everything as a risk assessment. We also think in a crisis mindset, so it can get very stressful when things bubble up and people walk up to you and say, hey, there's an issue going on. We have to ask things, what have you observed? How long has it been like this? Like the risk that you're describing to me, and is there an active exploit? Is there an immediate danger? And start to understand and identify the true risk behind things. If in a crisis you get led by those who are trying to raise the attention to this crisis, you really need to get to the nuts and bolts of it. I say here, and this is a little bit controversial, I say be a risky security person. Now, what I mean by this is when you are saying no all the time to the business in what they want to do, you are basically saying, I don't want you to take that risk because I don't want it to be on my shoulders. So often cybersecurity teams go, no, unless you get someone to accept the risk. Now, I agree with being able to accept the risk and having someone in the business say, yes, I'll put my hand up for it. But I think it needs to be changed. It needs to be changed is, yes, we can do it, but with these controls. Find a way forward. Promote a way that would reduce the risk to an acceptable level. And then you are taking the risk of providing that advice and it not being the right advice. But if you are a professional and you're a specialist in what you do and you get the experience and you do the training and you do everything you need to protect the organization, then you need to be able to back yourself. And that's what I mean by being a risky security person. You don't be risk averse from the perspective you never give advice and you say no to everyone. That's the extreme. You find a way forward and give them some options and help the business go forward. So it's a way to make the business establish a risk appetite and you work towards that. It's not about primarily butt covering across the organization, which I've seen a lot of. And reserve escalation. Okay, so if you need to escalate and you say, well, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to escalate to your director or whatever, and get this all sorted out, try and deal with the problem as much as possible at the level and layer and win not the argument, but help the person who's having troubles understanding the need for security controls. Start talking in those threats and areas. Start talking in those plausible risks that are going to occur. And I like to bring up this point. When we're in an organization, we want to make the organization succeed. So how do we provide advice to the organization so that it can succeed and we all get a bonus? Everyone's happy with that. So that's the backdrop of all of this. We actually want the organization to succeed in the business it does. We don't want it to be so scared of everything that it doesn't move forward. We want to provide sound, secure advice so it addresses risks to a meaningful level. All right, getting on my soapbox. Now, this is what a cybersecurity practice looks like, okay? So imagine an organization kind of, I hope you can see my cursor, kind of around it, like that. Yep. And then the executive group is up here, other parts of the organization are around. But basically, this is like the cybersecurity team. Now, the team lead, like the information security manager, the head of security or the chief information security officer, they sit in this kind of top tier here that spans the other disciplines, okay? Governance is all about pushing messages up so that the executives can pull strings back down, okay? So we're providing them with clarity so they can provide resources based hopefully on our recommendations. Management here is making sure all of this works properly, okay? So what we have here is 3 separate areas, and I really want everyone to think about which area appeals to them most, because if you are to be in cybersecurity, it'll help you to understand which certifications to go for, what type of jobs to go for, and what kind of cybersecurity character you are. Now, the guys over here are the guys in the and the girls are in the trenches. They are the technical operations people, the warriors. They're in the trenches with the bad guys. They're fighting them hand to hand. They're doing the security testing, the vulnerability scanning, the incident response, the monitoring, and maybe even the forensics. So these guys are sharpening their weapons all the time. They are honing their skills from a technical perspective, and they are the warriors. The guys in the middle here are and the girls, and when I say guys, I mean guys and girls, just to preface that, are the critics. They do the checklists, the review and compliance. They look at solutions and they tell you where the gaps are and how to fix them, maybe project review, auditing, compliance, that sort of thing. There's a big need for that in organizations. And then there's the visionaries. These guys are the guys who look ahead, who look at the horizon and say, for us to protect ourselves in the future, we need an architecture like this. We need a strategy like this. We need to be moving in this direction. This is the roadmap that would fall out of that. And this is the security program for this year that we'll follow to implement some of that strategy, and then reviewing that strategy. And these kind of 3 areas are what the core of the security capability is. Now, out of every single activity in this list falls risk and risk items, and they go into the risk register to be risk managed and communicated at risk committees so that you can identify risk through security testing, find something, a gap, a risk through incident response. There's some way that someone managed to get in, a risk in compliance, a risk in multiple technologies that overlap and are causing the organization a problem as well. So there is risk in all of these areas. Now, for the warriors, we talked about this. They're the technical guys, the security testing. They are doing certifications that are mostly technical. One thing I wanted to draw out is the incident response. It's important for those who are technically capable to handle incidents, because they can provide advice to the system administrators, the applications people, so that they can identify, contain, and eradicate the intrusion. Then they can recover the organization, find out lessons learned, and provide a report. So this is the process of incident response. I would say incident response is one of the early capabilities that an organization needs to go forward. It's possible you can get an outside group in, but if you have good incident response people, then you can limit damage during an incident far greater. So these are the warriors. These are the guys. I would say that sometimes you can typecast them. I've known some of the best warriors I've worked with are talk in UDP rather than TCP. They don't kind of gracefully close the conversation. And so they're very geared towards the technical way.
What were those UDPs, TCPs? I've never heard that.
I was being a bit cryptic. Yeah, no handshake. Yeah, Rajesh got it. Yeah. So no three-way handshake. Yeah.
Ah.
That was a technical joke for the Warriors.
Okay,
An
very
inside
good.
joke, guy. Yeah.
Guess who's not technical, gang?
Yeah. All right. So the critics. This is the group that really like to review documents, to put together documents, to make sure people are complying in a meaningful way, not just so they get compliance, but also address risk to the organization as well. Do third parties reviews, review cloud security projects, and maintain the risk register. And also the exemption register. That's really important because a lot of people want to do things and you can't solve it now. You might give an exemption for a couple of months and you need a register for that to address the risk. The critics, I find this the hardest discipline in cybersecurity to be excited about. I find it a bit dry, but I have had multiple teams where there are team members who really love this stuff, and it's certainly a personality type as well. And unexpectedly they do. So it's important to give it a go and to understand it. I think it's difficult as you're going through it, but rewarding when you actually get the compliance or you get a movement forward or get it reviewed by somebody else. The Visionaries are really looking ahead. They've got that enterprise security architecture. What they want to do is align the strategic goals of the organization with the strategic goals of cybersecurity. That's why cybersecurity is there, to help the organization achieve its goals. Implement defense in depth. Drive simplicity into the organization, because simplicity is the friend of security. The more complexity, it's harder to find those weaknesses. So having a simple security architecture is very important. Also understanding those paths of least resistance. So having a security control that people naturally use is really important. A classic example of this is something like those, the MFA verify apps. So it is much easier to authenticate with your username and password and then go to your phone and say, yes, that's me, than to put in a code. And yet it's fairly similar security uplift, but that's a great security control that has a path of least resistance. If you actually say, no, we're not going to do MFA at all, we're just going to give everyone 30-character passwords, I can guarantee you people are finding ways around having to type that in every time. So we're looking for good security controls that are also easy to use. Automation is really important from security architecture's perspective. The people cost is very high with cybersecurity, and you can get absorbed into security issues and lose days and weeks trying to resolve things. Having automation to make sure those administrative tasks are done well is important. Automation on security controls is a bit of a danger, because you remember IPS got a bit of a bad rap for a while there because it kept on blocking traffic that it shouldn't do. Having automation in security controls that turn on is still a little bit difficult. And then policies and standards should really support the enterprise security architecture and can be part of the security architecture and form a good base for it. And then also the security program and roadmap fall out of this area as well. Now the leaders are generally an interesting group. I've spent a lot of time with cybersecurity leaders, and they are, I say, strong personalities for most part, and really have kind of moved their way through the different disciplines of cybersecurity. But it's important as a cybersecurity leader to also be focused on the human factor and being able to build capable teams and hiring people that work well in a culture and retaining them and making sure you develop them into people that can contribute to the industry, not just maintain them in your team. I think if you try and maintain people in your team, you usually lose them. But if you develop them, then they get more opportunity to grow and they find that rewarding and may stick around. and also team performance is very important. Being able to gauge how much time we're spending in each discipline, how many risks we're reducing, which way we're going from a risk appetite perspective is really important as well. The leader is also good at dealing with execs, making sure that they have the clarity and that they can perform the governance and make the decisions about which way we go with cybersecurity and which initiatives in the security program that they want to support. And it's important to be safe hands, be considered a safe person to look after the security of an organization and keep that organization safe. All right, so how do you break into the industry? Well, it's actually quite
Jeremy,
difficult to start. Yeah.
Just before then, we've got a good question, or a couple of questions on how those different, I guess, character types interact. Rad's wondering whether being a visionary, is it whether it's a precursor to have experience as a warrior or critic to be a visionary?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Was there more questions?
No.
No, okay. So
start with that.
Yeah, I'll explain what I did in the industry. I spent most of my time here working my way up and down kind of this list of activities. I then jumped across to here and spent a bit of time for my sins in this area. Now, I'm saying it's a good area. I don't mean to bag it out. Auditors are fun people to be around. And then I went
just
to
showing your preferences.
Yes. And then I spent a couple of years in the strategy and architecture area before heading into management of the capability. So when I went up, I'd actually moved from here across to here. When you actually look at this, if you move from the right to the left, it is getting more tactical as you go from this side to this side, and it's getting more strategic as you go from this side to this side. There is more of a business focus from this side to this side, with the visionaries needing a very clear business understanding, and it's more technical going back again this way. So it's all to do with where your preferences are for dealing with people, dealing with the business, dealing with technological concepts and being technically capable. I will say that some of the best visionaries come from a deep understanding of the technical. It's not necessary though, because there are architectural principles you can implement without having that knowledge. And then also the critics seem to, the ones who are very focused on this, seem to come directly into this area as well. So less likely from here to here. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
that's just my experience, by the way.
Yeah, it certainly resonates. And we've actually done a single session webinar, Jeremy, where we've discussed different pathways, and a lot of the stuff we talk about is like and I'll chuck a link to that onto the course page. But a lot of the stuff we talk about is not just where you want to go, but where you're coming from, and your existing skill sets. Even if you want to completely change tack, would be a really like focusing on your existing skill sets to get a job in one of these areas and then move across to the other one would probably be more simple than just building all of the skills at once and probably come at a lower opportunity cost. Like it can be tough to break into a new career. So don't worry if you don't have a particular skill, or if there's a particular gap in knowledge. You can also always fill those gaps as you need to.
Yeah, and I'll say also, one of the best ways to get into cybersecurity is within your own organization. So that's how I did it when I was working for one of the telcos. I was very keen to get into cybersecurity. I met the guy who eventually helped get me hired in a bookstore looking at cybersecurity stuff. So we were working for the same company, and we were downstairs looking at the same book. And I'm like, oh, I want to get into this. And he goes, oh, well, I'm into it. We're looking for someone if you want to apply. And then that's how I got in. So it's important to remember that if you're part of an organization, your understanding of that organization, especially if you've been there for a few years, is very valuable to a security team. So getting someone outside who has no security knowledge and no organizational knowledge actually requires a lot of upskilling. Having someone come from inside and learning the security stuff on the job, but having good organizational knowledge is a good way of getting into the industry as well.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
then you can kind of fill out with your certifications, your technical knowledge that way. We might do the third poll. We're running out of time.
No, let's run long. Hang around if you can, folks, and if you need to get out of here, that's okay too. We'll have the recording to you. I'm just grateful for all of these cool resources, Jeremy. It's really good. According to the ACCC Scam Watch, which scam category accounted for the largest total loss of funds for Australians in 2020? Investment scams, dating and romance, remote access scams, or identity theft?
Oh, wow. This is fascinating watching these polls.
As Hannah yells at me for saying, why are you saying it's okay to run late, guy?
These polls are like watching the US election.
Terrifying.
Late. Yes.
Very drunk. Just like.
So I'll yeah. That's
Identity theft for the win. Dating and romance second, investment scams third, and remote access scams 7%.
So the way that the ACCC see it, the investment scams are the biggest by a long shot, actually, probably by about 30%. Then there's dating and romance after that. So yes, it is second. So that was well picked. And then I think it's remote access scams and identity theft is actually second from the bottom. There's about 15 in the list, but go have a look at that. It really helps you understand where the money is for the cyber criminals and what's kind of the flavor of the year and how the trends are going. But yeah, the investment scams, and most of these scams are still done over the phone, I believe. Have a look at that as well. So still very active over the phone. Yeah, so yeah, good one to be aware of how individuals are getting successfully scammed in the cyber realm.
Great. If someone just wants to Google that and chuck a link in the chat, that'd be awesome.
Oh,
we'll shut the poll and keep on going.
Yeah, they've got a really good interface. I've noticed they've upgraded it recently. It looks like the ACCC, you can search on different years, different months, all that sort of stuff. It's really
cool. Cool.
Okay, so how do you get into the industry? How do you break that nut? It's actually difficult to get into. I've hired many people into security teams, and one of the first things I put on there is 2 or 3 years experience. So, and that's for a junior. So if you need experience to get in as a junior, you know, what hope is there? Well, it's important to try and get work experience of any type. I think that's quite key. And that whole idea about getting in within your own organization is important as well. Making sure you can have some sort of link to security work is important. When I was working at that telco, when I was trying to get into proper cybersecurity, I was actually dealing or supporting the IT functions of an industry website that had a number of faculties like document storage and all that sort of stuff. And I asked not to just be the IT manager of that site, but also to be the IT and security manager of that site, because I wanted to have a focus on that. And that was kind of my first security in the title kind of role, and then moved over to security proper. So it's important to try and just get that leg in, to get some experience in it. There is a lot of need for security people. So there's certainly a lot of jobs around. It's just a matter of getting that experience and making sure you've got those certs to kind of back them up as well, and qualifications. Networking events are good. Having a good LinkedIn page, a LinkedIn profile that articulates what you've done without inflating what you've done is really important. If you're into the technical side, the capture the flag events and competitions are actually really important as well, and honing your skills that way and getting into that culture. Notice a lot of those competitions will actually lead to knowing about people, and if you're quite good at that, then that can lead to a role as well. I've seen that quite a few times. And then conferences are important. Good to get along to those. B-Sides is a really inexpensive one that you can learn about cybersecurity quite heavily. And then degrees and certs are just the start as well. So you may just start with those things with certifications, or even some sort of qualification at a university, to get to understand the landscape, get to understand the topics, and get to understand the language of cybersecurity as well. I think this is so these degrees, well, the certifications first. The CISSP is very well known. That's kind of like the base certification for being a cybersecurity professional. The CISM is and strangely, the CISSP requires experience as well, but you can get like a cert only portion without the experience, then fill in the experience later. The CISM is the defaults, or the industry standard cybersecurity manager certification. The CISA is for auditors, so those critics. The GPEN GCIH from SANS, the GIX from SANS are a little bit more targeted towards technical, but a bit more higher skilled. For pen testing, you've got the CREST, and the OSCP is highly regarded, particularly amongst those who work in the industry as pen testers. The offensive security certifications are very good. CompTIA does some basic certifications if you are going from ground zero and you just want to understand what cybersecurity is all about and understand the terms. Then some of the Security Plus is like the baby CISSP, and they're now doing a Pen Test Plus, which is actually quite good, a bit more like the GPEN, but not as intensive as the OSCP. And we based our IT Masters Pen Test course of that, which I'm giving at the moment. Of course, you can do a lot of courses through CSU and IT Masters, and I'd recommend that. I'm living experience of going through IT Masters and seeing how it has helped my career with that additional qualification to get a role that I was after. So it's an important thing to do, to continue to build on your own education.
Hey, Jeremy, what do you think of the Cert 4 in cybersecurity?
Out of TAFE?
Yeah, because we often get people who are sort of tossing up one or the other, and I know that it was recently subsidised by the government. Is it a good program? Like, is it a different set of skills? Do you know much about it? I haven't really looked at it too closely.
I'm sorry, I haven't. I think I've looked at it very quickly. I think it's a bit broader that, like a CISSP style thing, I think. But I've not actually talked to anyone who's completed it or looked at it, the curriculum, too much. So it's I'd be interested in someone's experience in the Cert 4 as well, but I don't come across it.
Yeah, wow, we've got someone in the chat who's just completed it. Peter said, "Yeah, it is." Right. How's your experience, Peter? Is it something worth doing? Have you looked at other things, and sort of what sort of pathway are you looking at? I'd love to get your input. Maybe chuck it in the chat or something like that, and we'll keep going and then flesh it out. Okay, so sounds inspiring. Sounds inspiring. I probably won't go into cybersecurity.
That's what I want to hear at the end of this talk.
Oh dear, I hope he's talking about the Cert 4. Yeah, so it goes into networking and all sorts of other things, as I might assume. It seems like it might be a bit entry level.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah.
Okay. So a lot of the technologies were on some pen testing. All right.
Yeah, Peter's got his chat set to all, just sending to the panelists for context, folks. So you won't be able to see it, but we can. Hence my too much nattering as usual.
All right, and that's it for me, I think. So happy to. I think you've got a couple of slides, Guy.
Yeah, sure. But I guess I'd love to talk a little bit more about your experience actually in the masters as well. Did you do a bachelor first? Did you? What's your?
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, just what's your post-grad or tertiary education story?
So I actually started doing marine biology at
the well-trod pathway.
So I'm a massive fan of actual fishing, not pH fishing, actually. So very strange. If you're as a young man, if someone said, "Oh, you're going to grow up dealing with fishing all the time," I'd be like, "Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to be fishing," but not the same stuff. But I actually love the ocean and fishing, the actual fishing, so I started doing a Bachelor of Science, majoring in marine science, and at University of New South Wales. I actually didn't complete that because computers pretty much stole me away, and I spent 10 years doing support and enjoying that and just being absolutely fascinated by them. So yeah, I became, fell a bit for the technology that was, being developed and always, always ever changing. So after that, I used industry experience to get into a Masters of Information Security, Master of Information System Security at IT Masters, and graduated, I think, about 17 years ago now, which is a bit, makes me feel quite old. And then, and through all of that, doing different certifications, I hit the certification track very heavily because back in the day, for security and for technology, the industry certifications were actually well regarded. So that helped me get jobs and stay sharp and show that I could do academic as well. But and at the university I'm at now, I've just recently done a Master of Research, which was quite a different experience. So
Cool.
yeah, so that's kind of my education history.
Yeah, and you're looking at researching areas of IT, or it's IT
So
ethics, isn't it?
I did it on fishing, actually.
Cool.
pH fishing.
Back to your roots.
To make that clear now. Yeah. So yes, I know. I've swung all the way around. So yeah, which is I think one of the major risks going forward for us globally. So yeah.
So I guess for a lot of the people listening tonight, they might be people who haven't done, I guess, a Bachelor of IT, but perhaps there's a bit more of an entry hurdle than when you started your IT career. And I just want to make clear to all those people listening that, with people like Jenny on board who can do assessments of eligibility and sort of talk you through pathways, you can sort of skip that first couple of steps if you really target some important areas and, hopefully use some of these short courses and all the other resources we're putting together. And there's so many other useful free resources out there. Like it's about, I guess, mitigating the risks associated with a career change for those that need it. And if you're like 18 and super keen, well, maybe it's a better idea to do the bachelor's, I think, and really build a foundation and get to play and get some internships going and all those sorts of things. But if you haven't got that time, then maybe jump into the grad cert would be a good idea.
Yeah, I started my master's degree as I think I didn't have any kids yet, and I think I finished before having kids. Yeah, definitely I did before having kids. My oldest is 12, so but I was working full time when I was doing my master's degree, so I got the experience, and I think experience counts for a lot in the industry. So I think it's right that some credit can be given on that. And I did a lot of my study on the train. I was catching the train from the suburbs into the city every day, and completed a lot of it in a lot of the dead time. It was great.
Cool. All right. Well, talk to these ones. These are just some of the resources that we have available. Like Jeremy, you put together the Certified Information Security Manager Prep, CISM Prep, which talked about that certification, and also the pen testing short course, both of which were really, I thought, enjoyable. I'm, of course, very biased. And if you want to have I think probably the best one to start with out of Jeremy's, if you haven't got much experience, would be CISM. It talks a lot about the conceptual stuff, and then get your hands dirty with the pen testing one after that. Would you agree, Jeremy?
Yeah. The pen testing one's quite technical. There's actually a machine you download, a virtual machine you download and try and break into, and you need to figure out the flags from that machine to provide into the examiner's answers.
Yeah, I'd probably say that just the order in which they're listed.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe chuck detecting and defending against cyber threats down sort of at the same level as pen testing. But if you start off with enterprise cybersecurity fundamentals, that talks to the CompTIA Security Plus certification. Phishing countermeasures is sort of like your first sort of hands-on mucking around with phishing emails. There's some really good practical activities in that one. And then, yeah, as we've discussed, these other ones are a bit more advanced, but you can work your way into it. And then for those that are keen on an IT career and perhaps already, well on a track in another career, maybe think about doing a grad cert in whatever field you're most interested, whether it is cybersecurity. I'm sure Jeremy's got you very excited about cybersecurity. It's certainly, hugely talked about in sort of business and government circles, perhaps to the exclusion of other areas of IT. And you can have a look at all these various university subjects. Pen testing, I know Jeremy takes, and he's probably taken heaps of other ones in that list.
Yeah, I can see 3 or 4. Yeah.
So that's just a broad list, and I'll chuck some links on the course page, throughout the week. And then the next thing we have to talk about is the bonus webinar. We've been pumping its tires up. So IT Masters and Charles State University have at long last been able to get an internship going. So we're going to start, trialing that one in a grad cert in career transition. And if that works well, we'll sort of expand it to all of the other ones. And that basically means you can choose to forego a subject and do an internship if you can find one that you like from the available options. We'll be talking about how that all works. Yeah. Welcome to attend, Jeremy, if you want to have a chat. But yeah, we've got a host company coming along, and they'll chat more about what they think about cybersecurity and also talk about their special projects. And we'll just have a bit of a Q&A session at the end of that, just to talk about anything that you might want to know about the internship particularly, and I guess postgrad study more broadly. So yeah, and we'll probably, encourage you to, if you are keen, have a chat with Jenny in the eligibility pages, which I can see Hannah's chucked a link in. Just tell us your story, and we can maybe help you put together a pathway. It's always a lot of fun and quite rewarding.
It's such a great way to get experience. I've got a couple of interns working with me at the moment, and they are fantastic. Those graduate programs and internship programs, and getting even just 6 months of experience under your belt is really important.
Cool, good feedback. Sometimes I worry. It's don't ever let yourself just be cheap labor doing a crappy job. Get real experience out of it, though.
Yes. No, it's worth a lot, the experience, definitely.
Yeah, it's good. All right, well, we've got about 150,000 questions. Let's whip through a few. I saw one that I can get rid of very quickly because I think I can answer it. Actually, maybe not any. Maybe I shouldn't be so cavalier. Which cybersecurity practice do you prefer most, Jeremy? I'm tipping Warrior, but have you started to get a lot of satisfaction out of the more visionary and management practices?
I always fall back to the technical fun stuff. I really enjoy putting together technical solutions, or validating a vulnerability, or making an exploit work, stuff like that. So I think that's really important. Certainly when you're dealing with executives, you start to lose sight of the technical. There's just less opportunity. So I always make an effort trying to just keep my skills sharp. I do this in a number of ways. I spend a fair bit of time in scenes and developing scripts to make sure we get better threat intelligence and enrich information, those sorts of things. So yeah, the short answer is I prefer the technical side. What were you going to say, Guy?
Well, that's what I assumed. I absolutely assumed that.
Good.
That acronym SEAM, can you just go through that one briefly?
Well, SEAM, Security Information and Event Monitoring System. There are other, there's a couple of competing definitions. Security incident and event monitoring, or security incident and event management. But it's basically a system that gathers all your logs, alerts you when something's gone wrong, and you can perform investigations into it. So you basically want to get all your security logs and access logs going into a system like this so that you can have good visibility into your environment. Because if you don't know about an incident occurring and you don't know how it occurred, you can't really combat it.
Beauty. Thank you. Before I go to the next question, thank you, Hannah, for reminding me to remind everyone else that you need to sign up for this bonus webinar. It's a different link, and we'll be broadcasting it to the rest of our database. Just say, hey, come along to this. But we just thought we'd include it in here because, you know, you're a bit of a captive audience and you seem like a good fit for the session. So Hannah's put a link in the chat and you can sign up for it there. And I'll remind you in the course emails throughout the week. So thank you, Hannah. Let it Subito asks the question, how can we do penetration tests? Do we do it regularly or periodically? And I think most of these answers are like, we have heaps of information on this in another short course that Jeremy's done. So there's a penetration testing short course and it discusses that. But briefly, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. So typically and traditionally, you do pen testing at least once a year on your perimeter. You might include wireless. You might include a internal pen test with that as well. So from a workstation that might be compromised. The industry is moving. The new way of thinking is like continuous testing. And there's also the bug crowds of the world who actually get, who do the kind of management of testers and take kind of crowdsourced testing and make that into a commercial offering. And they do it in a different way as well. So they do it on a bug bounty style engagement. So there's different ways to do it. The most traditional is running a pen test every year on your external perimeter.
Beauty, thank you. Guillermo asks, what is the most used coding language in cybersecurity automation? Is it Python?
Yeah, it would be Python. The old guys still use Perl. I'm not one of those guys. As in, I'm older than I look. But yeah, Python mostly. But yeah, there's Perl, there's Ruby. You kind of just need to be able to work in whatever's going. That's the biggest skill. If you're writing something for yourself, you typically use Python because that's just where all the help is. But yeah, if you need to modify someone else's script, then that's important too.
Yeah, as Tim and Matt Constable spoke about in the first 2 weeks, it's good to get fundamental skills and apply them to various environments. And that goes for certifications too, and that's where it might help you choose which ones to do. Yamina asks whether we can recommend some good cybersecurity newsletters or websites to keep abreast of cyber news and trends.
Yes, I forgot to mention that actually. Thank you for answering that. The best resource of my career, and a massive plug to Patrick Gray. I think he does the best cybersecurity podcast on the planet, and he's local, so he's in Australia, and it is very good. The podcast is called Risky Biz, like risky business, risky biz.
Cool. I'll chuck a link on the course page.
So if you do risky.biz is the actual URL. So I listen to that religiously. It helps get your eyes above the trenches. You see what's happening in the industry.
Cool. Let someone else do it. Rightio. And I'm also going to chuck a couple of really interesting resources that Jeremy's sent me. So I'll get that on the course page as well tonight.
Yep.
Interesting. Another question from Guillermo. Which email provider do you reckon is the safest in encrypting data? Google,
oh, wow.
Microsoft, ProtonMail?
Yahoo, of course. I'm joking. GroupWise. Oh, no, I'm joking again. I think some of the older participants might remember GroupWise. So I think there's no Of the big ones, you could consider them mostly safe. You're looking at Office 365, they have the facilities for you to use it in a secure manner. And these days, the massive ones, the Googles and Microsoft, they have all the security certifications. So um, the way they operate their cloud is considered highly secure, more secure than you'd be able to achieve in your kind of your own organization mostly. But it's more about how you're using that service provider. Um, um, I haven't looked into any kind of smaller providers than that, but of the free mails, I would suggest those. Um, I was going to say something else. I think Google's probably better at filtering spam, just from my experience.
Hmm, cool. Yamina asks a question that I will say is answered elsewhere on the course page. It's about position entry level position titles. I'd recommend going to the general course resources and having a look at a webinar that I did mid-year. It just talks about some popular security level entry level positions and sort of talks a lot more about pathway stuff. And I'll also chuck one that Jeremy and I have done before in there too. Can ransomware be prevented by proper backup? Asks Shruti.
I don't think it can be prevented. You can recover from ransomware, but it's still not trivial. If you think about the databases that you're backing up and the systems that you're backing up, ransomware can cause more damage than just the data. So if you're taking snapshots of VMs and you're backing up data, then you've got a good chance of being able to restore it, but you'll still suffer outage. But then also you may still not know how they got in and where they are in your environment. So prevention is better than the cure in this case. You'd want to use backup as a recovery option, but you still want to focus on stopping them getting it in the first place.
Thank you. Hannah, can you please prevent further questions from getting in, because we'll go forever otherwise. Could you please explain the main differences between vulnerability and pen testing? There was the vuln pen test on
Yeah,
that slide.
yeah. So vulnerability scanning, we typically call it, is generally performed by vulnerability scanning software like Nessus or um, Rapid7's one Nexpose or OpenVAS for the freebie one. And basically they're databases of kind of traffic patterns that can identify vulnerabilities in systems over the network. Some of them do authenticated vulnerability scanning as well, which will find vulnerabilities on the software installed that isn't exposed to the network. But that's what it does. It does a scan, it finds all the vulnerabilities and lists them out in a big report, and that's a vulnerability scan. It doesn't go the next step, which is actually validating that the vulnerability is actually exploitable and it can be moved, it can be used to gain access to the environment or access to data beyond just a vulnerability scan. So that act of exploitation and following up leads from a vulnerability scan and identifying candidates for exploitation or password guessing, that is more the penetration test. So you're actually trying to penetrate the perimeter and the defenses of the organization with the penetration test, where the vulnerability scan is really just assessing the vulnerabilities that might be there.
Thank you. There's a few questions from Sam, and Sam, I'll just choose one, sorry, just for the purposes of time. Chuck any questions that we don't get to tonight, folks, in the forums. Sam asks about mobile phones, saying they're increasingly being attacked and often data being ported, numbers being ported without the owner knowing. Yet organisations, even banks, are still forcing people to pay for a mobile phone and use their mobile phones more than ever before. Why don't organisations use secure tokens? Asks Sam, and are there any other considerations around that?
Yeah, the mobile number porting is a bit of an issue. Obviously, if you're using SMS for authentication or verifying transactions, then mobile number portability is legislated to happen very quickly. So you can port from one SIM card to another within 15 minutes. And if the controls aren't there to notify of someone reporting, then they may not know that that's occurred. So yeah, banks that are using SMS for verification, I think mostly it works, and mobile number reporting's been was a big problem at some stage, but I think it's gone to less of a problem in Australia because of the good notification that the telcos have done. Um, in terms of smartphones themselves, I think they are generally secure. I say that tentatively. From an iPhone perspective, I think that it's a much more robust environment from a security perspective because of the application vetting that occurs and the app vetting, and that they can pull an application. There is a lot of work done on Androids to make sure that the Google Play Store has only got good apps in it as well, but it's a much more open environment. So I guess don't if you don't mind sacrificing the openness, I would suggest if you're after security out of a phone, you might head towards the iOS phones, the Apple phones. However, if you're on a Google phone, I'd recommend not, or recommend making sure that you're able to update the phone when security updates come out, so that you are not exposed by those vulnerabilities that are identified in the phone. Um, Running an old Android phone might put you at a bit of risk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew asks about one of the most recent high-profile cyber attacks in Australia and how impacting toll logistics. In your opinion, was this avoidable?
Oh yeah.
And was it handled or resolved effectively?
So I've only read, so some incidents I know people who are involved, and I get some industry briefings about that, where they tell you, artifacts of and kind of the characteristics of the intrusion that aren't released to the public. That's not been the case for Toll. I've just read what's in the news. I guess you could say every cybersecurity incident is avoidable, but whether it was reasonable that they were attacked is hard to say, or reasonable that they were infiltrated. It's very hard to tell. I don't know anyone from Toll. I'm very sympathetic towards them, though. I think organisations, until security is a major problem, it's not really given the focus it deserves. So they could have been a bit of a victim of that, but it's hard to say. A lot of the ransomware, though, is getting through by the low-hanging fruit, and the idea is in someone in my position is to make sure organisations aren't that low-hanging fruit, and that you get rid of the obvious stuff really as fast as you can, and then work on and it's about that risk table, about that risk priorities, and working through them. Yeah, it's really hard to say. From the outside looking in, I'm sympathetic towards them. It can happen to anyone. They need our support. I hope that they don't get criticised, and I hope that the organisation is mature enough to actually provide guidance to the rest of the industry through their experience.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that victims of big hacks are rarely attacked again? Like they, once they've had it.
No. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think Toll might have been attacked by another group secondarily. That's the theory, because they've seen that there's a weakness there, and in they go. So it's I think you can get multiple attacks one after the other, unless you're pretty sure you know how they got in and how they traversed the network, and you've closed that down. I would be on high alert for a good 6 months after, I think.
Interesting. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. All right, a couple of quick ones. Can we use tools to detect attackers? Is that possible? From Soren.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's a lot of work, and it's important to do. It's part of a major part of cybersecurity programs that I put together, is actually to have good visibility into the environment, and it's not a destination. the environment's constantly changing if you're part of a large enough organization, and the way people use the systems is constantly changing. So this is what we're talking about, a SIEM. So you have a logging and monitoring system that takes all these events. You have security capability in the infrastructure, like firewalls and IPSs and VPNs and antivirus and EDR and the endpoint detection response capability. That is all should be all going to one area that you can correlate and identify malicious or unusual behavior and investigate it. So you can't say you can monitor for every single attack. You can monitor for the ones that are likely, and that's why you stay very close to and read a lot about ransomware. You read a lot about pen testing skills. You read a lot about incidents that have occurred and how they occurred and that initial intrusion vector. So it's really important to stay on top of how they're getting in and making sure you have the telemetry and the information to know if they are getting in. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Keenan, just quickly, any internships for international students? I'll do some research. It's a new program and I'm not sure how that would work, but given it's an online post-grad, I would think that we'd be able to provide an online internship. I'll confirm that through the week though. Thanks for asking. Nicholas asks about AI and cloud computing, saying they're becoming more advanced. What would you say are the trends in cybersecurity and cyber attacks in these spaces?
I think AI has some, and machine learning has some real future, in cybersecurity and benefits for cybersecurity, because you can manage a lot more of the large data sets in this way. So having a good data set and being able to run machine learning across it to, even on past incidents, to understand what the patterns are, without having to, use a human mind to work out the patterns, could be a lot of benefits. Cloud computing is changing the way we do cybersecurity from a separation perspective. We used to have a one big choke point, the firewall, and different segments, where you go into the data center, the DMZ. Cloud computing is kind of changing all of that, where it's more of a fabric of systems that can all talk to each other, but you have rules about how they can talk to each other. So it's just a matter of understanding how those different environments work and the security controls that you can apply there, while keeping the same principles of, least privilege, only giving the access required, and making sure the perimeter is secure as well. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Ron asks, best cert for a noob?
I'd go the I'd do some of the short courses for a start, just to kind of get your because they're free and you can have a look at them and figure out if it's something you enjoy studying. But if you actually want to get a certification, I reckon even the CompTIA Security Plus is all right. The CEH, if you're going to head down the technical path, is all right. They're kind of considered kind of baby certs in the industry, but I think if you are diving in, it's a good way to understand the terminology used in the industry, and then also get an understanding of what might inspire you and what you enjoy about cybersecurity.
Yeah, the CEH is Certified Ethical Hacker, which we also have a postgrad subject on. And if you do get the cert, you can get a credit. So go nuts.
Yeah, good
one. Sharon wonders whether you have any thoughts on integrating the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is the American one, I understand, to organizations in Australia.
Yes, it's very popular, and I think it's a good framework to provide to executives for metrics and dashboards, and easy to understand at all layers of the organisation. So I think you'll see Australia head in that direction as well. I think most of my peers are, if they're heading down the 27001 path, which is a security standard for continuous improvement and risk management, and information security management system, then they're often dovetailing it with the the cybersecurity framework from NIST. Yeah. So it's well regarded and it's being adopted, I think, if not overtly, under the covers.
Thank you. Alrighty, what do we got? We got about 12 questions left. Ron, again, I think we've already covered this. How does a cyber person keep on top of the latest threats, attacks, and governments? Do lots of reading, do lots of certs, renew the certs once you get them because they'll lapse otherwise. Risky biz.
Yep.
Hopefully, we'll get you a whole heap of resources. And
yeah, there's another podcast called security.com. security.com.com by Paul Asadorian.
Okay, I will chuck that link on there too.
Security.
I tell you, we're going to give so much free marketing to so many people.
Yeah, Paul's Security Weekly.
Okay.
They do muck around a bit, but their content's good. I think Patrick gets some point.
Okay, good to know. I'll take the mucking around one. Guillermo asks, do security consultants need a similar technical background as a pen tester or incident responder? This goes again, I guess, to the use your skill set.
Yeah. I don't think it hurts to have a good technical background, but if you rely on that too much when you're dealing with the business, you won't talk the business language. So it's important to have the balance of two. And this is what really makes a very capable cybersecurity person, someone who can stay in the technical and understand it and explain it in a way that the business can understand. So being that bridge between, there's a technical risk there that's going to cause really big damage, and this is what you need to do to repair it. And actually convincing the business to do something about it is the real skill. So technical helps. Pure technical without being able to talk to business may actually be detriment, but will still allow you to be a gun pen tester. Just being able to talk to business without the technical background, you're going to need someone to be advising you at a certain level.
Really pertinent question from Yamina. In terms of cybersecurity skills demand, is the need in entry level or at the mid to executive level?
Oh, I think it's entry and mid. It's all the way through, I have to be honest. So I think it's pretty even. There is a fair bit of shuffling of security roles around different organizations. There are, I see roles going past all the time. I think demand's all the way through. Organizations are looking to put on security leaders. They're looking to build security teams because even if you think about COVID as well, a lot of things have gone digital. They've had to be more remote. That's created a few additional risks that need to be addressed, and it's not kind of going away. So I think the need is just rising at all kind of levels of cybersecurity experience.
Okay, thank you.
What do we say when something really bad happens in the industry? We say jobs for life, even though it's making us very tired.
Yeah. How is Australia doing on the international scale in terms of cybersecurity? Are we competitive? Do we need work? Is it unfair to think in terms of nation states?
No, in terms of our capabilities in protecting ourselves, like the security capability in Australia, is that what we're talking about? I guess if we look at how many skills are in Australia, I think that we have a need. I think we have a lot of skills in Australia. We have a lot of good startups. There are government initiatives to help cybersecurity startups and to make that industry great. But I think a lot of we can't compete with somewhere like Silicon Valley or Israel coming kind of number two, even for such a small country. They are pumping out security capability at an amazing rate just because of the nature of their situation in the Middle Eastern environment. They're amongst a whole lot of enemies, so they have to understand not only their physical security, but also their cybersecurity. So they are pumping out cybersecurity experts and cybersecurity companies, only second to Silicon Valley. So we're a little bit punching below our weight in that regard, but it's because it's because of the environment they're in. We're in a very fortunate place where we're surrounded by ocean rather than enemies. So we're in a good position from that perspective. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Did to me. MG asks, what is the best entry path into cybersecurity? Degree first and certification later, or the other way around? I'm going to steal that question and say, do you agree with me that there's no best entry path? It sort of depends on your context.
Yeah, I think so. It depends what you can do first and what will keep you motivated. Maybe if you dive into a degree, you might have bitten off a lot, but maybe that's where you find your feet as well. So it depends on the individual. The important thing is to have a plan. Often when I'm doing a career plan with my staff, I talk about a 5-year goal, like what do I want to be in 5 years? What position do I want to be in 5 years? And then I think about, well, what qualifications do I need to attain over 3 years? So I think about those qualifications that I would need to reach that goal. And then I think, what training do I need to do in this year to get to those qualifications and that end goal? So looking at that context, it's really important to set yourself a goal. It may be wrong. You may get halfway through and go, oh, I don't want to do that at all. I've actually been attracted by something else. But it's important to move somewhere. And that's probably the advice I'd give.
Thanks. Habib, from very early in the lecture, said you were talking about only keeping the data necessary for a business.
Yeah.
But Habib reckons any data is important for business. Where do you keep the rest?
So this is the really big tension with the business, because often the business will say, hey, we want to keep that data just in case we need to use it in the future. I would suggest that is placing the business under undue risk, and that every time you want to collect and store data and process it, you should be providing a business reason for that. Without that, and if you're collecting private information without a business reason, then it may be a problem if it was breached and you get asked, why were you keeping that information? So it's important thing to turn around to the business when the business says, oh, we want to collect this, 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 and this, and you say, well, just give me a business reason for it. If you can articulate a business reason, then we'll protect it. That's fine. But I think that's important thing to start that concept, bringing that into organizations so that there is thought around what is kept. There are some businesses that break that, or some areas of the business that break that. Sometimes business intelligence breaks that model because you don't actually know what you're going to need to run your long-term kind of reporting. But then that becomes your business case, is that we have long-term reporting. We are likely to use this field in the future, although we're not at the moment, and that's the strategic plan. But if you're just keeping stuff just for kind of funsies, or just because it may be useful, then I think you're actually really got to think if you do need to keep it, and the cost of keeping it, securing it. And I like the idea, particularly with the privacy information, of using the family test. So if your parents or your kids had their information stored and lost in this way, would you be happy about it? So that real personal cost should really be thought about, particularly when it's private information.
Cool, thanks. Final question. Shoji wonders whether there is any major difference between cybersecurity specialists and cloud security specialists, certified cloud security professional. That sounds like it might be a certification. Can a cybersecurity specialist perform the same jobs of certified cloud security professionals?
So I think any kind of certification will help you to do certification work and understand the principles of cybersecurity. The principles do still remain true. but it's just how you apply them in different technologies. So it's important to get some certification. And I'd say that if you can upskill yourself in how that technology works fairly quickly, then you have a good way of being able to understand it and understand how it might be protected and attacked.
Rightio, thank you so much. That was a lot of questions. Thank you so much,
Oh,
everyone, for
good.
sending them in. There's some really good questions tonight.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, so also thanks for hanging around, everyone. I know we kept you late, but I hope you got something out of it. And those that are listening along to the recording say thank you very much. I'm always very grateful, Jeremy, for the mentors that stick back and spend so much of their time when, you know, there's so little of it.
Fantastic.
So we'll keep in touch. Thanks, Hannah and Jenny, for hanging around and looking after the chat. Yeah, just Jeremy, as always, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. It was another great webinar.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions and questions.